Hello, hello. We are back again. So if some of you want to know more about this research, Amy and Antoine have published in Harvard Business Review the whole research, the results, the action, and also the post-experiment that Antoine has mentioned 1 year after to measure the effect of the behavioral science intervention. Now we are very excited. Employee engagement is a critical topic for organization, but I think sustainability is a critical topic for all of us. So now we are very happy to have a fantastic roundtable, and we ask Max Stanley, who is behavioral scientist at the Abu Dhabi Department of Energy, Etienne Brissou, who is the Chief Behavioral Science Officer at the BVA family, and also CEO of BVA Energy Unit in France, and Régis Solagne to join us. Régis is Head of Industry and Utilities at BVA X site.
This live roundtable will be moderated by our colleague Sophie Coudet, who is the Business Development Director at BVX site here in France, and Sophie was heavily involved in this project as well. At the end of this 30-minute roundtable, there will be about 5 to 7 minutes for live questions, so we can take some here from the audience in Paris, or for those of you online, I know our colleagues Hélène and Isabelle are watching the comments and questions online. So, guys, we hand it over to you.
And thanks to be there.
Good morning, everybody. So we are very happy to have today Max Stanley from the Department of Energy of the Government of Abu Dhabi with us. It's a great pleasure. And so we'll have a nice conversation with Etienne and Régis and Max about this fantastic project that the Government of Abu Dhabi has decided to launch in order to reduce water and electricity consumption. So maybe, Max, I will ask you first if you can tell us a bit about the background of this project and how you decided to include behavioral science in it.
Yeah, certainly. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. It's very exciting to be here in Paris. So the Department of Energy in Abu Dhabi launched a demand-side management campaign about 5 years ago, with the key target of reducing energy usage by 22% and water usage by 32% in the Emirate of Abu Dhabi. They came up with about 10 different pillars of how they're going to tackle that. One of those pillars being behavioral science. It was very important to them that this is tackled not just from a technology standpoint, but also from a social standpoint. And that was the attraction for me. You know, it showed a it showed a maturity in the thinking that we have to tackle this from both sides. The scale of this problem, this doesn't just is an issue within the UAE, but this is very much a global problem at the minute. So that's what made it very attractive for myself to be there. With those two kind of key areas being that energy and water reduction, the behavioral science piece then is really looking at how can we action that, particularly within people's homes. And a third area that we wanted to look at within that behavioral science pillar was buying decisions, particularly things like highly efficient appliances, but even things like smart home automation, where we know there's also those additional opportunities for energy efficiency savings.
Thank you. Etienne, can you tell us a bit, briefly, about the method that was applied, the different steps, and maybe we will then discuss things in details and with example, but just to have an overview of it.
If I want to go just briefly on that, I think what is very important and what was very attractive within that project is since the objective was set about water and energy reduction with 22% and 32% reduction, and since the Department of Energy have raised different program. What was very interesting as behavioral scientists is to be able to identify the right program in which we will be able to apply behavioral science in order to enhance the efficiency of each program, meaning retrofit building, for instance, or you just spoke about the appliance. When you have energy performance standard that you want to raise, that's very important to know that this program exists and that we can embed within it, rather than doing a specific behavioral science project that will be a bot. And when you have the program, what is very important, and that's part of the methodology, is relying on the right stakeholders and having the right person, because they are the one who are in control with. And when we speak about the retrofit, for instance, the energy saving companies are key because they will allow you to do the retrofit in the right way. When you speak about the appliance, private company can be key as well, because you have to be able to sell those appliances to the people in the right way. And then I would say the next step is identifying the right target, because you can not apply behavioral science on everyone. And by the way, not everyone will be able and wish to reduce his energy demand. So we have made several surveys in order to identify the right target amongst the population, knowing that almost 65% of the people are agree to change. I would say that 15% don't care, and the rest are already in the way to do it. And that's very important to be able to target the 65% of people who agree to do something but do not do it yet.
Thank you. And you give me a perfect transition to ask Régis about one of the particularities of this project, which is to have combined very closely input from studies that you led and input from behavioral science. So you really work closely together, Etienne and you, on this project. So can you tell us what was the input of the studies and what was the challenges? Because we are in a part of the world where the climate is specific. The population is also a bit different. So, Régis, tell us a bit about all this.
Yes, thank you. In fact, taking the starting point of trying to reduce, we in fact needed at the beginning to understand where we were. And as you just have said it was quite different from what we know. The climate is very different. 52 degrees in summer period, 20 in winter, but this just changes the usages and the topics, because where in France we speak about heating, there we speak about AC. We have here some trouble regarding heating the water there, they just want to cool it. So everything was quite different on this kind of climate side. But after climate, there was another very specific things which is linked to the population. And in the UAE, you get 10% of Emirati. This population, they are born there. They will stay their whole life there. They don't have to work. They get high purchasing power. And 90% of the rest of the population is made of expats, but different kind of expats coming from everywhere in the world, coming with their past, with their awareness, with their living in their own countries, and people from the Arabic Peninsula, but also Asia, Western, and with very different level of purchasing power, such as leaders of big company, but also people working on the as domestic helper or on building sites. So it was very important to understand how this works, and taking finally into account the fact that in the household there were a lot of people interacting with domestic helper kids. So all these things we needed to understand how it worked, and that's why we have made a very large picture of the situation, the current situation, in order just to know from where we started, what do people currently do today, what kind of equipment they have, What do they know? How aware are they about the fact we need to reduce, and what kind of knowledge they get regarding the local resources? How do they want to act? Do they know what to do? What do they do? So all these things, we just have set some questions in order to get these answers, and at the end we had a clear picture, and we made a segmentation of the population regarding the maturity and willingness to change. And from this, we discussed with DOE regarding what the key targets are, and also what kind of usages we should change in priority. And before just starting this to build some solution, we needed to get one step further and see people go at home and see and let them show us how they do it, how they manage the water and electricity usages, and test some stimuli of behavioral change levels, try to identify which are the barriers and the levels to change, just in order to be able on specific topics. We had 6 or 7 individual usages to change, to be able to get a good solution to put in integrating behavior side aspects.
Thank you. And Max, may I ask you also how you see the input of studies in this project combined with BSI? Do you have specific examples in mind of how you thought maybe it was very valuable to have this added to the BSI approach?
Yeah, so I'll speak to a few pieces. So my colleague Christopher Jamack, he sort of began this program by kind of 18 months ago now. And as kind of Etienne touched on, behavioral science is this one pillar, and it was very important to utilize, the widespread utility of behavioral science across all of those various pillars and integrate the approach. The work that was done from those studies has allowed us to kind of identify actually which of those pillars are going to take advantage of that the most. Particularly the qualitative work that we did just gave that further lens to that quantitative information that we had. A couple of key examples. We had early identified that mosques were a huge user of water. And we thought, here's an opportunity. There must be some waste here that we can actually tap into and look to more efficient methods. But actually going through that qualitative piece, we actually identified that this wasn't wasteful behavior. This was actually culturally hugely important behavior. And actually there wasn't the opportunity there, and we had to look elsewhere. We briefly touched on domestic helpers. It is very commonplace for homes within Abu Dhabi and households to have some form of domestic help. And with that, the government of Abu Dhabi actually the government of the UAE has a widespread program where anyone that's coming into the country to be in one of those roles receives legal guidance, they receive training on their rights and just additional support, so if they ever do find themselves in a situation, they have someone that they can reach out to. So we identified that there was a centralized place that we could tap into this group and actually provide energy and water in-home behaviors to try and give that training, so that as they're going into the household and actually taking that action, they have hopefully the tools and knowledge that they need to do that in a more efficient way. And this has now been scaled up across the UAE and has been massively impactful for us. But going through that process, again, the qualitative piece, qualitative has a wonderful way of showing you just what you missed. You may have thought you were smart, but you just missed the mark. And the example here was, we had identified quite early on that actually the level of English within this group was very, very low, and even the level of Arabic was very low. So it was important to us to translate this material into their mother tongues. So we had about 5 or 6 different languages that this information was available in. But actually, as we went through and did that qualitative work, we realized that actually even the level of reading and writing within this group was to to a point where even translating it into those other languages wasn't as impactful as we'd hoped. And actually we need to look back to how can we kind of further imbue that information much more from a pictorial standpoint, but also, is there the opportunity for us to digitize some of that information as well? So it really has been hugely valuable and kind of just pointing out just all those kind of key little pieces that you may have missed and just kind of giving that further insight and imbuing them with the stories of these people. It's all well and good kind of having these ideas, but until you kind of go into someone's home, speak with them and understand, how they're living these experiences, that's where the key insights come from. That's where the magic comes from.
Thank you. Thank you for the very concrete examples. Etienne, from your point of view, can you tell us how you played with the material Régis produced and how you integrated it and how useful it was for you, and maybe about your approach in this project?
First, I must say that I have a lot of fun with the material that Régis provide to us. I would say that market research survey are useful in 2 points. First, in order to choose the battle, and second, in order to choose the way to address the challenge that we had. If I want to take the example, in order to choose the battle, you can find some data at a macro level. For instance, if you try to focus on the residential, you can see that, and that's macro survey that allowed the Department of Energy to identify that we can save 35% of the energy that is consumed at home for people. So that's the macro level, and that's perfect. That's the first level of survey. And the second level one is the micro level that we can have. Okay, we can save energy within the home, but how and what is the usage that people have from energy? And then it goes back in that country for Abu Dhabi. I think one thing that is key is AC, on which we can play. And on the micro level, we see that few people are equipped with a way to program the AC, which is quite important. And second, a lot of people who are equipped put some temperature below 20 degrees, which means a huge consumption of energy. Whether we could put it at, 24 could be an objective, but let's go step by step. And as just Antoine Ferrer said, let's go with small incremental change and try to reach the final objective. So first, as you can see, those surveys help us to choose some of the battle. One was about AC, another one was about outdoor consumption, for example. And then it helps us as well to choose the way to tackle the battle. If I go back to outdoor water consumption within the residential, we have few examples. You use water in order to wash your car. And in Abu Dhabi, people wash their car very often, much more often than I do. One point was, okay, let's try to work on the frequency. And at some point, thanks to qualitative research, we understand that it will be quite complicated to work on the frequency because people, for several reasons, cultural, because of the environment and the desert and all that kind of thing, they have to wash their car. So let's work rather than on the frequency, which was our initial thought. Let's work on how people wash their car. And we know that it's much more efficient if they wash their car in a car wash rather than at home, if they use dry wash, and rather than the water jets at home. So let's try to work on the way that people are washing their car. And another example is about the way you water your grass and your garden. We thought that we had to explain people about when to do it. And what we have observed, thanks to the qualitative survey, is that people already know when to do it. And by the way, they are doing quite well at that. So it's much more a question of intensity of water that they put within the grass rather than when they do it. And that's about automatic irrigation system, and few of them are equipped. So that's the way to tackle. So as you can see, we have some we have some synergies between the qualitative research who indicate us where to work on. We have some hypotheses, and the qualitative research allow us to understand better where we can go and if we take the right path or the wrong path and try to correct that.
Thank you.
Yeah, to continue Etienne's point, it is such a different environmental context there compared to Europe, but even a social context is very, very different. And within Europe and the kind of climate and energy crisis that we're facing here, there's a huge cost to energy here, whereas within Abu Dhabi and the UAE, there's actually a very high degree of energy security and energy affordability. So it meant for us that the traditional economic approach wasn't going to work. We had to take a social approach. It required kind of highlighting that sort of social value and putting it front and center when it came to these decisions.
Thank you. Thank you for the concrete example. Very interesting. I think there was another element in this project that's probably also a key component, which is the Be Wiser program in order to train the experts. Etienne, can you explain a bit what it is and how it was useful in the program?
Yeah, that's a first step about another roundtable about infusing behavioral science within an environment. Be Wiser is a training program that we had in order to go deeper in behavioral science and to have a lot of stakeholders being aware of what it is and how to apply it. And I think it is part of one of the points that I just described previously about having the right stakeholder, that's fine, but how to embed those stakeholders and to work with them and to make them come to you. And that's where by training people around behavioral science, explaining them what it is, and not just only a 1-hour conference on which people think, wow, that's great, and I think I understand everything. If you go in a deeper program, then people understand that, yeah, okay, that's great, but that's not just anecdotes. That's about science, and maybe we need some expertise in order to apply that. So those programs is a way to embed the stakeholders, which work quite well because, as you have seen, behavioral science is quite cool, by the way. So that's quite easy, I would say, to attract people to behavioral science. But the fact is to make them bridge the gap from being attracted to applying it. And that's what we try to do with that program. And what we see is that after having done that program, first I would say that people are coming back to Department of Energy saying, okay, that's great what we have seen, let's try to apply it on our program, which was one of the objectives. I would say another thing is that it's more easy to work with the people when they are aware of what we are trying to do and how it works. And maybe you will speak about the kits that we have worked on. And I think that having the knowledge of behavioral science was important in that kind of project. And I would say that the last thing is when we do the program, which is a program that is a 10-week program for the Department of Energy and the stakeholders, people start to work on their project and start to have some ideas about how they could apply behavioral science. And for instance, there was a group working on green tourism, working with hotel and the green label for the hotel, and they had some idea about having some green team within each hotel that will be in charge of the different things. So there are several components that are really useful by training all the stakeholders to behavioral science.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we are a regulator. It was actually our stakeholders that are doing a lot of this implementation. So it really was vital to us right from the beginning that we give them the knowledge and tools to be able to do this work. There's the only way this was going to scale was by doing so. So it was hugely important and hugely valuable having that training being provided.
Okay, and what was your feeling because you were also in the program?
Max was already knowing a lot of things that was in the program. He didn't learn in the program, he made the connection.
It was still a thoroughly enjoyable experience, and just having even just an hour a week to focus on one idea uninterrupted, you don't always get that. So it was still hugely valuable, even for those that have some background and knowledge.
Thank you. Okay. Maybe you wanted to say a few words about the kids kit, or as a conclusion. I mean, I think I would like to ask you, because I think we've worked together for a bit more than a year now, and what's your takeaways from this experience, and also how you think about using the same kind of work in the future, and if you have project maybe you want to talk about.
I'll speak about a couple of pieces that we looked at. So we kind of briefly spoke about the domestic helpers. Another piece actually on the efficient appliances was actually a point that Etienne had made early on at one point, which stuck with me, was no one wants the Department of Energy in their home. No one wants the government in their home, but private companies and brands are already there. And so we did a piece of work with IKEA in creating a sustainability store within the usual layout of IKEA, so that every individual that's going through has that opportunity to purchase a sustainability item or kit. We did some work, one of our stakeholders did a body of work with a number of the large supermarket chains to create a green corner where the highly efficient appliances were kept separate from the inefficient ones, or the less efficient ones, and creating a designated space for them. In doing so, we kind of highlighted that kind of social value of, here's where you want to go if you see yourself as someone that is conscious about being green and about being sustainable. But importantly, it also changed the reference point when it came to cost. All of a sudden, you weren't comparing your, fairly expensive high-end, 5-star appliance versus a, 2 or 3-star appliance that is considerably cheaper. You were only comparing it against other 5-star or 4-star appliances. So just by changing that reference point, we're able to change that decision there, which the early data has shown that, it has worked. We're going to scale it up now and do a larger kind of RCT across a number of stores and see, can we, continue to get those sorts of results, and, does this become policy somewhere down the line? The children's kits, which was quite a fun one, which again highlighted to us the importance of doing that qualitative work. We wanted to provide a efficiency kit for children, so that they had something that they could action as well, and kind of again bringing this into the home. As a part of that process, the initial idea was looking at, can we have some kind of booklet or comic book or something that kind of demonstrates that actions that we want them to take, makes it a bit more engaging, makes it a bit more experiential for the children. As we went through it, the work that we thought, we've absolutely nailed this. The moment you put it in front of kids, they rip it to shreds. They, two pieces that stood out to me was a couple of the items that we had initially there as prototypes. Because they were just prototypes and weren't end products, and weren't of a particularly high quality, they're like, oh, this is made in China. This in itself isn't sustainable and doesn't fit the narrative. There was some pieces within the comic book itself where, again, they just wanted more depth to the characters. They wanted the backstories, and by not providing that, they just weren't quite able to engage. So it was hugely important, having gone through those focus groups, just identifying those things that you missed. So it was really quite a wonderful experience there. And my two sort of takeaways from the whole project really so far have been, just that value in the qualitative work, and actually just the time to value now of behavioral science work. There's so much incredible work that's being done across the world. There's so much wonderful material out there, and there's so many people that have already done this, that there is pioneers that you can reach out to and get that experience and knowledge. So it means when you're trying to look to projects that you can do within your own organization, it's so much quicker to actually looking at key results, being able to demonstrate value to an organization that, there's no reason not to be doing it.
Thank you. I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yes, I could react on one point. I'm very happy you raised the private-public collaboration because definitely that's something that is very important to me. I think that private company and public organization can work all together toward the same goal, and that's not so clear for all public organization nor private, by the way. So I think that's to me a great lever. The Green Corner experiment definitely show that, and that's very important. I would say something else that's to me a great takeaway of the experiment that we had together is definitely being embedded within programs that already exist. That is part of the real strategy. Give you some room in order to do the thing, because if you just do a behavioral science project apart from the rest, it will be quite complicated, I guess, to have all the stakeholders involved, because you need the person who are able to change the context and all this kind of thing. So definitely embed what you do within a program is a great takeaway that I also apply now in other contexts, but that's another story. And I would say regarding the experiment on the Green Corner, which is also to me one great takeaway of behavioral science, is if you want to change something in people's behavior, go where they are. Don't hope that they will come to you. And that's where you can go within people a bit rather than trying to change the habit that they have in order to have them to come to you.
Thank you, Etienne, for this tip. Very useful. I think if none of you would like to say something additional, I think now we can take questions if there are some in the room.
From Leila in the chat, she said, hello.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. What were the behavioral drivers that were used to encourage the targeted behaviors?
Maybe I can jump in the Green Corner experiment, because definitely to me that's a great one. And just as you say, framing was a great driver, because if you are in a traditional shop without any Green Corner, you have your choice is amongst a lot of appliances that goes from 0. Does that 1 star? I would say 1 star to 5 star. 5 star being the appliance that is fully energy efficient. And then your choice is going from 1 star to 5 star. And as you said, 1 star are very cheap. So the choices can go quite quickly on appliances that are cheap but not energy efficient. And when you dedicate some Green Corner, you change that framing. That's not the same framing. You have to choose between a 4 star or a 5 star, which are almost the same price altogether. And you do not have in your mind the 1, 2, 3 star that are cheaper, which are, by the way, in another corner of the shop so that you can use it. So framing has been used, for instance, regarding that kind of thing. Another lever that we try to work on is default. How can we, by default, put the AC at 21, 22. Let's go step by step. Maybe the maintenance company can do that. Maybe if we go in a building, in office building from the government, you can have some people who by default put the AC every morning at 22, so that people don't have to think about it. So we have plenty of different levers regarding the different experiment that we can make as well.
That's it. For each of the individual programs, it was, let's try and identify some of those, underlying drivers or levers. Then let's look at framing and choice architecture.
Okay.
Thank you. You guys mentioned the importance of culture and all these cultural nuances. My question is, in your team, in the design team, did you have people from the local culture and the different types of local culture? And if yes, what do you think is the role of having that in the project, and the role of you being foreigners in that situation? Where does it help and where it doesn't?
Yeah, great question. So we did have a number of local nationals on the team. So they were hugely valuable and hugely important when it came to kind of providing that cultural context. It gets ever more complicated when, as was mentioned, only 88% of the population is actually nationals. There's over 200 nationalities that exist there. So whilst there's an underlying culture that you have to kind of be aware of, there's so many different cultural dimensions that it becomes increasingly complicated and increasingly fun.
But just to complete, we went there. And in fact, we made these in situ interviews, and going from an Asian house to an Arabic one to a Westerner. And it was very, very important for us to see by ourselves and to share with the Emiratis what we have seen on some usages. We were quite astonished about the frequency to fill out the swimming pool, for instance, the duration of shower. This kind of thing was amazing to us, and was really interesting to share it with the locals, just to know if what we had seen was real or not, and how we could understand it. And we have let people express themselves in these interviews, and that was really very, very important to us.
I would add just one point. It's about the stakeholders that we have in the program that are mostly local people living there. And definitely we rely on them, and we work in a complementary way. We give the behavioral science insights, we give some inspiration regarding that, and they tell us what is feasible or not regarding the cultural aspect. So definitely it is very important, and it's totally integrated within that.
I'm not sure we can take 3 more questions. So, no, I don't know. I have instructions on the screen. Sorry, so maybe you can answer. Thank you very much. Thank you to the speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie.